Welcome to the Lore Lodge. Tonight, we're walking the haunted roads of the Witcher universe. Get comfortable. Close your eyes. Let your shoulders drop. The fire is warm. The story is waiting. Picture this: a forest road at dusk, some 500 years before you were born. The pines press close, their trunks dark and slick with evening moisture. The air smells of wet earth and something else, something sharp, metallic, almost like lightning, trapped in amber. Your horse snorts and plants its hooves, refusing to move. And then you feel it, a vibration in the ground, a sound like reality itself is tearing at the seams. That smell, that feeling in your teeth, that is the scent of the conjunction of the spheres. Now, let us go back further still, much further, to the moment when everything changed, when the world your witches walk came into being, and monsters walked beside them. The conjunction of the spheres. Even the name sounds like something from an old nightmare, something scribbled in the margins of a forgotten grimoire by a scholar who had seen too much and understood too little. And perhaps that is fitting, because the truth of what happened in those distant ages is itself a kind of nightmare, one that humanity has been trying to wake from for 1,000 years. You must understand something before we go further. The world of The Witcher is not a world of clear answers. It is not a world where good vanquishes evil in tidy chapters, and everyone goes home to warm hearths. It is a world of grey, of difficult choices, of the weight of what we do to survive, and what survival costs us. And the conjunction of the spheres is where that weight began. We do not know exactly when it happened. The scholars argue about such things as scholars do. Some place the conjunction roughly 1,200 years before the present age. Others insist it was 1,000 years ago, or perhaps 1,500. The truth is that no one alive today was there. The truth is that the conjunction belongs to that haze of prehistory where myth and event blur together like watercolors left in the rain. But we know it happened. The monsters tell us so. Every drowner dragged from a river, every griffin shot from the sky above the mountains, every leshy burned in the deep woods. They are all children of the conjunction, proof that something tore open between worlds and poured its horrors into ours. Picture, if you will, 2 sheets of parchment lying flat on a table. On one sheet, humanity builds its first fires, learns to shape stone into tools, tells stories around those fires about gods who live in the sky and monsters who hide in the dark. On the other sheet, other things move, other beings, creatures that humanity has no names for, because humanity has never imagined anything so terrible. And then someone, something, some force beyond comprehension folds those 2 sheets together, presses them until they become one. And in that violent communion, the boundaries between worlds shatter like glass. That is the conjunction. Not a battle, not a war, a collision of realities, a wedding of worlds that neither side consented to. And from that wedding, monsters were born. Now, here is where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean genuinely horrifying, in ways that make you grateful for your central heating and your electric lights. The creatures that poured through those rifts were not simply dangerous animals. They were not the wolves and bears and wild cats that humanity had learned over millennia to fear and hunt and respect. These were beings from dimensions where different rules applied, where physics wore different clothes, where the very fabric of existence was woven from nightmares. Drowners did not exist before the conjunction. Neither did ghouls or neckers. or the terrible wraiths that haunt old battlefields. The cockatrices that terrorize peasant farmers in the present age spawned from the conjunction. The arch-griffins that nest in the highest peaks of the northern kingdoms also conjured from somewhere else entirely. The very creatures that witches would one day be paid to destroy did not exist until a cosmic accident turned the natural order upside down. And humanity was not ready. How could they have been? Their myths spoke of dragons and giants and witches who lived in the woods, but nothing had prepared them for things with too many eyes, for creatures that crawled from the spaces between stars, for predators that did not merely hunt for food, but salu for something far more unsettling. Let us take a moment to sit with that. The peasant of 1,000 years ago, living in their small village with their small fields and their small gods, hearing stories from traders who had crossed the mountains. Those stories suddenly became real. Worse than real. The monsters in the stories had been manageable. You could run from a giant. You could outwit a witch. But how do you outrun something that has no name? How do you fight something that moves like water and thinks like an insect and leaves no footprints because it barely touches the ground? The answer, for a very long time, was you could not. The first decades after the conjunction must have been apocalyptic in the truest sense of the word. The word itself comes from the Greek apocalypsis, meaning revelation. And what was revealed in those dark centuries was this: humanity was not alone in the universe. Humanity was not even the most dangerous thing in its own world, and the universe had no interest in humanity's comfort or survival. Villages were abandoned. Trade routes collapsed. Whole regions of the continent fell silent. The great forests that had always been mysterious places where peasants feared to tread became hunting grounds for horrors that had no natural predators. And humanity, armed with bronze swords and wooden shields and prayers to gods who seemed very far away, was losing. Losing badly. Losing completely. The histories speak of a dark age. Some scholars call it the age of the Great Migration, because so many humans fled the countryside for the growing cities, seeking walls and guards and the false safety of numbers. Others call it the Age of Sorrows, a time when grief was so common it became the default condition of existence, when every family had lost someone to the monsters, and the measure of a life was not how much you gained, but how long you survived. But here is where our story takes a turn, because humanity, for all its fragility, has always possessed one quality that even the monsters of the conjunction could not anticipate. Humanity adapts. Humanity innovates. Humanity looks at an insurmountable problem and says, with that beautiful stubbornness that has carried us through every catastrophe our world has ever faced, I will find another way. And in the darkest heart of that darkest age, that other way began to take shape. We must speak now of the mages, the first sorcerers and sorceresses who emerged in those chaotic centuries. They had always existed, perhaps tucked away in the corners of human society, practicing arts that their neighbors found unsettling. But after the conjunction, they became necessary. They became vital. When your swords cannot pierce a creature's hide, you need someone who understands forces beyond the physical. When your priests pray to gods who do not answer, you need someone who can speak to those gods directly. When the world breaks, you call the people who know how to mend it. The mages gathered in the growing cities. They offered their services to kings and merchants, to anyone who could pay. And slowly, painstakingly, they began to study the monsters that had invaded their world. They collected corpses when they could. They interviewed survivors. They traced the movements of the creatures and identified patterns, weaknesses, behaviors that could be predicted and exploited. And in their studies, they made a discovery that would change everything. The monsters, for all their otherworldly nature, could be killed. They were not immortal. They bled. They burned. They could be destroyed by the right weapons wielded in the right ways. The mages learned which metals burned them, which herbs confused their senses, which signs, those gestures of power that mages wield, could slow or stun or banish them. But there was a problem, a significant problem. A problem that you might recognize from your own life if you have ever tried to explain something complex to someone who has never learned the basics. The mages could kill monsters, but they could not be everywhere at once. There were, even at the height of their influence, perhaps a few hundred mages scattered across the entire continent. They were powerful, yes, gifted with abilities that ordinary humans could never possess. But each mage could only be in one place at a time, and the monsters were everywhere, in every forest, in every swamp, in every abandoned village and forgotten cave and shadowed corner where humans feared to tread. The mages needed agents. They needed hands to hold the swords. They could not hold themselves. They needed eyes to watch the roads. They could not watch. They needed, in short, an army. But an army of what? Here enters a word that you have likely heard before, a word that conjures images of silver swords and cat-like eyes, and a life spent wandering the blood-soaked roads between one monster hunt and the next. Witcher. The name comes from the old tongue, that ancient language spoken by the first humans who crossed the mountains and settled the land. Wiccan, they called it. To witch, not in the sense of casting spells, but in the older sense of the word. To turn, to change, to become something other than what you were. Because that is what a witcher is. In the most fundamental sense, a human being who has been turned, changed, altered at the deepest levels of body and mind to become something new, something that can do what ordinary humans cannot, something that can face the monsters and live. The first witches were not born, they were made, and the making of them is one of the most remarkable, most controversial, most disturbing stories in the entire history of the continent. The process began, according to the oldest sources, in the years immediately following the conjunction. The mages, desperate for soldiers who could fight the monster threat, began to experiment. They tried training warriors in the fighting techniques they had developed. They tried arming them with the special weapons they had forged. They tried everything they could think of. And it was not enough. Ordinary humans, no matter how well trained, could not match the creatures from beyond the spheres. They were too slow, too weak, too fragile. Monsters could kill a trained soldier in seconds. Monsters could hear a heartbeat from 100 paces and smell fear like a bloodhound smells rabbits. Monsters operated on a different level entirely, and no amount of training could bridge that gap. So the mages did what mages do. They reached deeper. They began to experiment with the very nature of human beings. We must speak now of the trial of the grasses. And I warn you, what follows is not a pleasant story. It is not a story that has a happy ending. It is a story about what humanity will do to survive and the cost of that survival. The mages discovered, through years of brutal experimentation, that they could alter the human body at its most fundamental level. They could introduce substances, mutagens drawn from the very monsters the witches would one day hunt, that would trigger changes in the human system. Changes that would make those humans stronger, faster, more resilient. Changes that would give them the senses they needed to track monsters through the darkest forests. Changes that would allow them to survive wounds that would kill an ordinary person 10 times over. But there was a catch. There is always a catch, is there not? In every story, in every deal with forces beyond your understanding. The process was dangerous, dangerously dangerous. The mutagens that the mages introduced did not always take. They did not always integrate with the human system. Instead, they often rejected that system entirely, tearing it apart from the inside in ways that no one who witnessed could ever forget. The survival rate of the first trials was catastrophically low. Perhaps 1 in 10 candidates survived, perhaps fewer. The histories are unclear, and perhaps that is intentional. Perhaps the chroniclers of those early ages did not want to record exactly how many children and young adults died screaming on the conversion tables of the first witches. Because that is who they used. Mostly, the sources suggest that the early trials were conducted primarily on children, on young people whose bodies were still growing, still flexible, still capable of change in ways that adult bodies were not. The mages believed, and perhaps they were right, that younger candidates would adapt more easily to the mutagens, that their still developing systems would accept the changes more readily. They were right, in a sense. The survival rate improved marginally when they used younger subjects, but it remained a lottery of horrors, a roulette of suffering. For every child who emerged from the trial transformed and strengthened, a dozen others emerged as nothing at all, or as something worse than nothing. The mutagens worked by fundamentally rewriting the candidates' biology. They drew on the essence of the monsters themselves, that same otherworldly material that had poured through the conjunction and corrupted the natural order. And in doing so, they created something new, something that was no longer entirely human, something that existed in the space between the world humanity had known and the world that had been forced upon them. The witches-to-be were not simply trained warriors. They were not merely skilled fighters who happened to have good reflexes. They were mutations, living proofs that humanity could change itself, could adapt itself, could become something new to survive in a world that had become something terrible. And the changes did not stop at the physical. The witches, who survived the trial of the grasses, emerged as something alien. Their eyes changed, turning the color of a cat's eyes in the dark, capable of seeing in near total darkness. Their hair whitened or grayed or fell out entirely. Their skin grew pale, drained of the warm tones of ordinary humanity. Some developed what the records call witcher senses, heightened perceptions that allowed them to track a monster by the scent of its fear or the sound of its heartbeat from half a mile away. But the most significant changes were internal. The witches, who survived the trial, found that they could cast signs. Those simple gestures of power that the mages had taught them became something more, something instinctive. They did not need to study for years to learn how to throw a burst of flame, or create a protective shield, or freeze a creature in its tracks. The signs came to them as naturally as breathing, a side effect of the mutagenic changes that had rewritten their bodies. And perhaps most importantly, they developed an immunity to the curses and venoms and diseases that made monster hunting so deadly. A witcher could drink water from a poisoned well without ill effect. They could be bitten by a venomous creature and shrug it off within hours. They could face a creature whose very touch was meant to drive humans mad and remain perfectly calm. The mutagens had made them something other than human in the most literal sense. They had made them resistant to the forces that killed ordinary humans. And so the first witches were born, misfits and survivors and children who had been put through hell and emerged on the other side as something new. They were gathered by the mages who had created them and trained in the fighting techniques and monster lore that would keep them alive on the road. And then they were sent out into the world to do what no ordinary human could do. To hunt monsters, to protect humanity, to be the thin line between the darkness and the communities that huddled behind their walls, praying that the witches would come before the monsters did. The early years of witcherdom were chaotic. There was no system, no organization, no clear sense of how the witches should operate or what they should charge for their services. Each witcher worked alone, following the trails of monster attacks and the promises of coin from terrified nobles. They were regarded with suspicion by most ordinary people. Mutants, freaks, children who had been transformed into something that was no longer human. The church preached against them, calling them abominations against the natural order. Common folk crossed themselves when a witcher passed, muttering prayers against evil. But the monsters kept coming, and the witches kept killing them, and slowly, grudgingly, humanity began to accept that these pale-eyed wanderers, with their silver swords and their strange ways, were necessary. Perhaps not welcome, perhaps not trusted, but necessary. The lesser evil, as the old saying goes, when the greater evil is a griffin tearing through your livestock and your children. And as the witches proved their value, an industry grew around them. The mages who had created them established the first schools, training facilities, where candidates could undergo the trial of the grasses and emerge as fully fledged witches. The first was Kaer Morhen, the fortress in the mountains that would become the most famous of all witcher strongholds. But it was not alone for long. The schools of the witches represent one of the most fascinating developments in the entire history of monster hunting. Each one represented a different approach, a different philosophy, a different set of mutations and techniques designed to create a particular type of witcher. Let us speak of them, one by one, because each deserves its own moment of recognition. Each represents a branch on the strange and twisted tree of humanity's adaptation to the post-conjunction world. The School of the Wolf. This was the oldest and most famous of the Witcher schools, the one that trained Geralt of Rivia, whose name you have almost certainly heard if you have spent any time in this world at all. The Wolf School was based at Kaer Morhen, that fortress perched high in the Blue Mountains, where snow covers the ground for 9 months of the year, and the wind howls like the wolves themselves. The Wolf Witches were generalists. They learned a little of everything, mastered no single technique to the exclusion of others. They were the jack of all trades of the monster hunting world, equipped to handle whatever horrors the continent could throw at them. The training at Kaer Morhen was brutal. It had to be. The trial of the grasses alone killed more candidates than it saved, and that was before the training even began. The young witches who survived the mutation were put through years of intensive instruction, swordsmanship from dawn until dusk, monster lore until the knowledge dripped from their ears, signs and alchemical preparation, and the subtle arts of tracking and trapping that separated the living witches from the dead ones. Vesemir. The name echoes through the halls of Kaer Morhen like a prayer. He was the oldest witcher anyone could remember, the last of the first generation, the one who had trained countless witches over the centuries and somehow survived to see them all. He was the heart of the Wolf School, its memory and its conscience, the living bridge between the early days of witcherdom and the present age. When you think of a witcher, you probably think of someone like Vesemir, white-haired and scarred, grizzled and wise, carrying the weight of every monster he had killed and every student he had lost. The School of the Cat. Oh, the Cat School. Now here is where things get interesting, in ways that are not entirely comfortable. The cat school specialized in speed and agility, creating witches who moved like the creatures they were named for, capable of fighting in confined spaces and handling threats that required finesse over brute force. They were trained in cities, in the courts of nobles, in the shadows, where politics and murder often wore the same face. But the cat school was also the most controversial. Their methods were considered questionable by the other schools. Their witches were often hired for work that was not strictly monster hunting, work that made use of their stealth and their willingness to do things that other witches would not do. The cat school had a reputation, and it was not entirely a good one. The cat school no longer exists. We will speak later of how and why, but their legacy lingers, a reminder that not all witches walked the same path, that the grey morality of this world extended even to those who were supposed to be its protectors. The School of the Griffin, founded in the Northern Kingdoms. The Griffin School emphasized the use of signs, creating witches who were almost as powerful in the magical arts as the mages who had originally created them. They wore distinctive armor, heavy and decorated, designed to protect them as they hurled arcane forces at their enemies. The Griffin witches were scholars as much as fighters, trained to understand the magic they wielded, to know why the signs worked, rather than merely knowing how. The Griffins were the thinkers of the Witcher world, the ones who asked questions and sought answers, the ones who believed that understanding the enemy was the first step to defeating it. Their methods were slower than those of other schools, their training more cerebral, but the witches they produced were formidable in ways that went beyond the physical. The School of the Viper, the Assassins, the Poisoners, the witches who specialized in taking down creatures and enemies that could not be approached directly. The Viper School trained its witches in the art of the long-range strike, the carefully prepared ambush, the poison that killed slowly and stealthily. They were the witches you called when the monster in question was too dangerous to face head-on, when the only way to win was to ensure it never saw you coming. The Vipers were based in the south, in territories that would later become part of the Nilfgaardian Empire. Their methods were effective, but often brutal. They were not witches for those who believed in clean fights and fair odds. They were witches for those who cared only about the result, about the monster dead on the ground and the village saved from destruction. The School of the Bear. And finally, the bear, the heaviest, the most heavily armored, the slowest and most powerful of all the Witcher schools. The Bear Witches were tanks in an age before tanks existed, walking fortresses who could shrug off blows that would kill any other Witcher outright. They wore the heaviest plate armor of any school, carried the broadest swords, and specialized in facing the most dangerous monsters in the most direct way possible. The Bear School produced witches who were not elegant. They did not dance around their enemies like the Cat School or bombard them with signs like the Griffins. They walked forward and they hit things, and those things died. There is something almost comforting in that simplicity, something that speaks to a fundamental truth about combat. Sometimes you do not need finesse. Sometimes you just need more. And there were others, in the margins of history. The School of the Manticore, in the distant East, whose methods and philosophy remain poorly documented. The School of the Crane, which specialized in fighting other humans and was thus considered something of an outlier. The School of the Buffalo, which may be more myth than reality, mentioned only in the oldest tales and never confirmed in any reliable source. Each school represented a different answer to the same question. What kind of witcher does the world need? What combination of skills and mutations and philosophies will produce the most effective monster hunter? The answer, of course, was that there was no single answer. The world needed all kinds. It needed the speed of the cat, and the power of the bear, and the magic of the griffin, and the cunning of the viper. It needed witches who could think, and witches who could simply fight, and witches who could do a little of everything. Humanity, in its desperation, had learned to diversify. But the witches were never numerous. This is an important point that I want you to carry with you as we continue. Despite the establishment of multiple schools and centuries of training, there were never more than a few hundred witches active on the entire continent at any given time. A few hundred individuals to protect millions of humans from the endless tide of monsters. Think about that for a moment. Really think about it. A city like Oxenfurt, one of the greatest centers of learning in the northern kingdoms, might be home to 100,000 people, and there might be, on a good day, 2 witches in the entire city, perhaps 3. The mathematics of monster hunting were always brutal. The witches could not be everywhere. They could not save everyone. They could only do their best, take the contracts they could reach in time, and hope that the ones they missed had found somewhere safe to hide. They were never heroes in the way that the stories portray heroes. They were not celebrated champions riding to save the day at the last possible moment. They were hired swords with unusual abilities and an unusual lifespan, doing a job that needed to be done because no one else could do it. And the job was always there. That was the tragedy of it, always there. The monsters never stopped coming. Why? That is a question that has haunted scholars for centuries. Why did the monsters never stop coming? The conjunction of the spheres was a single event, a moment in time when 2 worlds collided and merged. By all rights, once the initial flood of creatures had passed through, the flow should have stopped. The rifts should have sealed. The nightmare should have ended. But it did not. The monsters continued to appear. New species were discovered every decade. Old species evolved, adapted, became more cunning and more dangerous. The witches, who thought they had catalogued every threat, found new horrors lurking in the corners of the map. New rifts opened, apparently at random, pouring more creatures from the spaces between worlds. The scholars have theories. Perhaps the conjunction did not create rifts, but instead weakened the barriers between dimensions permanently. Perhaps the monsters were always here, hiding in spaces that humanity had never explored, and the conjunction simply made them visible. Perhaps there was something about the act of killing monsters that created more monsters, some cosmic balance that could never be tipped permanently in either direction. No one knows. No one has ever known. And the witches, who faced the monsters every day, learned to stop asking why and focus on how to kill them, how to survive, how to keep the human race from being wiped out by the things that had invaded their world. The how was enough. The how kept them going. But if the early centuries of witcherdom were defined by survival, the later centuries brought new challenges, new threats that had nothing to do with monsters and everything to do with humanity's oldest and most reliable source of trouble, ourselves. The witches had always been viewed with suspicion. They were mutants. They were changed. They did things that ordinary humans could not do and should not be able to do. The church preached against them. The common folk whispered that they were in league with the very devils they claimed to hunt. In hard times, when monsters rampaged and no witcher came to help, the rage of the survivors turned against those who were supposed to protect them. And so the persecution began. The assault on Kaer Morhen, the burning of the Griffin School, the scattered remnants of the Cat School hunted like animals across the southern kingdoms. Somewhere in the centuries after the conjunction, humanity turned on its protectors. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps it was jealousy. Perhaps it was simply the natural human tendency to destroy what we do not understand. The witches had never asked to be what they were. They had been made, against their will in many cases, by mages who needed soldiers. They had been trained to kill monsters and sent out into a world that hated and feared them. They had done their duty, year after year, century after century, watching their brothers and sisters die on hunts that no one thanked them for. And in the end, when humanity no longer needed them quite so desperately, they were thrown away, cast out, hunted down like the very creatures they had sworn to destroy. The trial of the grasses was forbidden. The schools were destroyed or driven into hiding. The mages who had created the Witcher Order were driven away or killed or went into hiding themselves. The knowledge of how to make new witches was lost, hoarded by a handful of survivors who knew that one day it might be needed again. And so the witches became what they are in the present age, a dying breed, a handful of aging mutants wandering the roads of a continent that no longer knows what to do with them. Each year, there are fewer. Each decade, the odds of their survival grow longer, and no one is being trained to replace them. The monsters, of course, keep coming. This is the tragedy of the Witcher. Not that they are monsters themselves, though many believe that. Not that they kill innocent creatures, though some of them certainly would have been innocent in a world that had never known the conjunction. The tragedy is simpler and more human than that. The tragedy is that they were made to protect us, and we could not bring ourselves to protect them. Let us pull back now. Let us zoom out from the individual stories of witches and schools and trials and persecutions. Let us look at the larger picture, the pattern that emerges when you examine the history of the conjunction and its aftermath. What you see is a world in constant crisis, a world that was never meant to be what it became, a world where humanity found itself suddenly sharing its home with creatures from dimensions that operated on rules humanity could not understand. And humanity's response, in all its messy glory, was to adapt, to change, to become something new. The witches are the most visible symbol of that adaptation, but they are not the only one. Consider the mages, whose power grew in direct proportion to the monster threat. Consider the kingdoms that formed in the centuries after the conjunction, their borders drawn by the need for collective defense. Consider the trade routes that were established specifically to move witches from one crisis to another. Consider the entire social structure of the continent, shaped and reshaped by the constant pressure of the monster threat. The conjunction did not just bring monsters, it brought change. Fundamental, irreversible change in how humanity understood itself and its place in the universe. And here is where I want you to sit, with something that might seem obvious, but bears repeating. The witches were not the heroes of this story. They were not even, in any meaningful sense, the victors. They were survivors. Like everyone else in this world, they woke up each morning and tried to make it to nightfall. They took contracts and fought monsters and drank in taverns where the locals crossed themselves at their approach. They loved when they could and grieved when they had to, and tried not to think too hard about the meaning of it all, because meaning was a luxury that did not keep you alive. The witches are mirrors. They reflect something back at us about what we are willing to do to survive, about the cost of survival and whether that cost is worth paying, about the nature of humanity and whether humanity, in its desperation, ever stops being human at all. I think about Vesemir sometimes, the last of the old guard, the grey father of Caer Morhen, who had trained witches for centuries and watched most of them die, who had lived through the persecution and the burning of the schools and the slow dying of everything he had built his life around, who kept going anyway, who kept training the next generation even though he knew there would be no generation after that, who loved those children, those mutant children who had been put through the trial and emerged on the other side, and who could not protect them from the world that hated them. Vesemir represents something important about the Witcher universe. He represents the possibility of goodness in a world that does not reward goodness, the possibility of love in a world defined by fear and hatred, the possibility of finding meaning in duty even when duty offers nothing in return. He is not a hero in the stories. He is too small for that, too human, too flawed. But he is something perhaps more important. He is a person who did what he believed was right, even when it cost him everything, even when no one thanked him, even when the world he was trying to protect turned around and burned the places that had taught him how to save them. The conjunction of the spheres is not just a historical event. It is a lesson. It is a warning. It is a mirror held up to show us what we might become if the world we know is ever torn apart by forces beyond our control. And the witches are the answer humanity gave to that warning. Imperfect, tragic, perhaps doomed from the start, but an answer, a proof that when the darkness comes, we find ways to survive it. We transform ourselves, we adapt, we become something new. Whether that transformation is a triumph or a tragedy depends, I suppose, on who you ask, on what you believe about humanity and its potential, on whether you think survival is always worth the cost. I will not tell you what to believe. That is not my place. I am merely the storyteller, and the storyteller's job is to show you the shape of the fire so that you can see what lies in its heart. The fire burns low now. The story is almost done. We began with a forest road at dusk, a smell of lightning and wet earth, a horse that refused to move, and a feeling in your teeth that something was about to tear. That feeling was the conjunction. That smell was the birth of the world you have been walking through tonight. The world of witches and monsters and grey moralities and difficult choices. The world where nothing is simple and nothing is guaranteed, and the only constant is that tomorrow will probably try to kill you. But you might survive it anyway. That is the lesson. That is the gift that the witches offer, even in their dying. Not heroism, not salvation, just the proof that survival is possible, that transformation is possible, that even in the darkest night, the fire can still be lit. The witches are almost gone. Now, a few wander the roads, taking contracts that pay poorly and risk everything. A few more huddle in hidden fortresses, hoping that the knowledge of how to make new witches will never be needed again, hoping that the monsters will somehow, someday, stop coming. They know it will not happen. They do it anyway. That is the Witcher way. That is the human way. When you strip away everything else, we do the thing that must be done because it must be done, and we hope that someone, somewhere, remembers that we did it. The witches ask for little a roof when it rains, a meal when they are hungry, a place where they can put their feet up and not worry about being attacked in the night. The coin they earn is spent on swords and potions and the endless road ahead. They do not accumulate wealth. They do not build monuments to their own glory. They simply keep going until they cannot keep going anymore, and then someone else takes up the sword. That is the cycle. That is the story. That is what the conjunction started 1,000 years ago, and what it has wrought ever since. Rest now. The story is done. But the world goes on. The monsters hunt. The witches hunt the monsters. And somewhere, in a fortress in the mountains, an old man tends the fire and waits for students who may never come. The world is full of sadness, and also full of small acts of grace that make the sadness bearable. Let that be enough. Let that be enough. Close your eyes. Get comfortable. Picture yourself standing in a courtyard carved from living rock, high in the mountains where the air thins and bites at your lungs. It is autumn, and the wind carries the first whisper of winter from the north. Around you, ancient walls rise like frozen waves, their stone darkened by centuries of rain and snow. You are standing in Kera Morhen, the seat of the wolf school, and the wind is singing through cracks in the battlements above. You breathe in, and the cold fills you. There is nothing here but stone and silence and the endless mountain wind. No servants, no crowds, no village calling out its greetings as you pass through iron gates. This is a place designed to be forgotten, and in that forgetting, it has become something more than a fortress. It has become a temple to a very specific kind of purpose. To understand the Witcher schools, you must first understand loneliness. Not the loneliness of missing someone, but the loneliness of being set apart. Of looking at the world from above, always watching, always waiting for the creature that crawls from the dark. The schools were built in places like this because the people who ran them understood something fundamental about their craft. Witches could not be made in comfortable places. They could not be forged in warmth. Let us begin at the beginning, not with the conjunction of the spheres, because someone else will tell you that story, and they will tell it well. Instead, let us begin 50 years after the first witches walked the earth, when the schools were still new, and the knowledge of creating them was still fragile. The world had learned that monsters were real. It had learned that ordinary soldiers died like wheat before the scythe, when faced with the things that crawled from dimensional rifts. And it had learned, with bitter experience, that something had to be done about it. The earliest witches were not made in schools at all. They were individual practitioners of what we might generously call experimental alchemy. Alchemists and hedge wizards, people with knowledge of mutagens, but not much understanding of what those mutagens actually did. They took volunteers, or sometimes people who had not volunteered at all, and they poured chemicals into their blood and hoped for the best. The survival rate was catastrophic. For every witcher who emerged from those early trials, dozens lay down on stone tables and never rose again. But the survivors, the handful who lived, proved that it could be done, that human beings could be transformed into something more than human, something capable of facing the horrors that the conjunction had unleashed upon the world. And if it could be done once, it could be refined, it could be taught, it could be passed down from master to student, each generation learning from the mistakes of the one before. And so the schools were born, not all at once, and not in any organized fashion. Different teachers, working in different places, developing their own variations on the basic process. Some focused on combat, on turning their students into perfect killers. Others emphasized signs, the rudimentary magic that witches could channel through their bodies. Still others dedicated themselves to the study of their prey, understanding that to hunt a monster was to know a monster, to become an expert in its habits and weaknesses. Over time, 5 major schools emerged from this chaos of experimentation. The Wolf School, the oldest and most famous, training in the mountains of the northern kingdoms. The cat school, secretive and mobile, operating from hidden bases throughout the continent. The griffin school, founded by mages who believed that magic and swordplay could be perfectly balanced. The viper school, the assassins, the poison masters, the witches who operated in shadows and whispers. And the bear school, the newest and the simplest, focused entirely on raw strength and survival. Each school developed its own philosophy, its own training methods, its own variations on the trial of the grasses that transformed ordinary human children into witches. And each school produced warriors who were, in their own way, perfectly suited to a particular type of monster hunting. But they all shared certain things in common. They all emerged from the same basic process. They all carried the same markings, the cat-slit pupils that could see in darkness. They all moved with the same preternatural grace, the same unnatural speed. And they all carried within them the knowledge that they had been remade, against their will, into something that ordinary people would never fully accept. Let us talk now about that process, about the trial of the grasses itself, because this is where the real horror lives, and also the real wonder. Picture a boy, perhaps 12 years old, brought to a fortress in the mountains by parents who could not afford to feed him, or who had heard that witches were well paid, or who simply wanted their child to have a chance at survival in a world that was rapidly becoming too dangerous for ordinary folk. The boy is frightened. He has been told that this place will make him strong, that he will leave as something more than he entered. But no one has told him what that actually means. No one has described to him the sound of his own bones grinding as they reshape themselves. No one has warned him about the fever that will burn through his body like liquid fire. No one has explained that his heart will stop and start again multiple times as the mutagens tear through his system and rebuild it from the inside out. The first trial takes place in a chamber deep beneath the fortress, where the temperature is kept constant by ancient magic. The air smells of sulfur and something else, something almost sweet, like rotting flowers mixed with copper. The boy is laid on a stone table, and the alchemists begin their work. There are no anesthetics in those days. There may be sedatives, mild ones, but nothing strong enough to dull what comes next. The mutagens enter his bloodstream through a series of cuts, shallow ones, made with silver blades along his arms and legs and torso. The alchemists believe that the metal matters, that silver somehow amplifies the transformation. Modern scholars debate whether they were right, but the tradition persists, and so we continue to cut with silver, even now. The boy screams as they all scream, and the sound echoes off the stone walls and fades into the darkness below. For the next 3 days, the boy lies in the grip of a fever that would kill an ordinary man. His body convulses as the mutagens take hold. His muscles twitch and seize, rebuilding themselves along lines that human biology never intended. His eyes roll back in his head, and if you were watching, you would see them begin to change. The irises would shift, would fracture into something that no longer looked entirely human. The pupils would elongate, becoming vertical slits, better for seeing in darkness, for tracking movement in shadow. The alchemists watch. They monitor his temperature, his pulse, the color of his skin. They intervene when necessary, forcing liquids down his throat to keep him hydrated, adjusting the poultices that cover his wounds. And they wait, because there is nothing else to do now but wait. The mutagens will do their work, or they will not. The boy's body will adapt, or it will fail. And there is no way to predict which it will be. Statistically, in those early centuries, roughly half of all candidates died during the first trial. Half, every second child, who lay down on that stone table, never rose from it. The alchemists learned to improve their techniques, to refine their mutagens, to reduce the mortality rate over generations. But even in modern times, with all our accumulated knowledge, the process remains dangerous. 3 out of 10, perhaps 4 out of 10, still die. It is a brutal arithmetic, and one that the schools prefer not to advertise. But let us say the boy survives. Let us say that on the 4th day, he opens his eyes, and the world looks different. It is not just that he can see better in the dark, though he can. It is not just that sounds are clearer, sharper, that he can hear his own heartbeat and the subtle rhythm of blood moving through his veins. It is something deeper than that. The world itself seems more present, more vivid, as if a veil had been lifted that he never knew was there. He sits up, and he is stronger than he was. Not just a little stronger, but significantly so. His reflexes have sharpened. His healing has accelerated. He will recover from injuries that would cripple an ordinary man in a fraction of the time. But this is only the beginning. The first trial is merely preparation. It opens the door. What lies beyond is a lifetime of further transformation, further change, further becoming. The boy will undergo the second trial at around 16, when his body has matured enough to withstand its strain. This is the trial of the grasses proper, the one that gives the entire process its name. More mutagens, more cuts, more fever, more danger. This time, grasses are involved, specifically cultivated plants that contain the concentrated essence of monster DNA. Not just any monsters. The alchemists choose specific creatures, matching the mutagens to the type of hunting the school specializes in. The wolf school uses mutagens derived from wolves, from leshens, from creatures of the forest that hunt in packs and know the mountains. The cat school prefers faster prey, lynxes and wildcats, and the like. The griffin school draws on creatures associated with storms and sky, griffins themselves when they can be obtained, but more often, basilisks and cockatrices. Each school develops its own library of mutagens, its own recipes, its own secrets. After the second trial, the boy has become what he was meant to become. He is a witcher, a fully transformed monster hunter, capable of the incredible feats that make witches legendary throughout the continent. But he is not finished. 2 more trials await him, the trials of the dreams and of the mountains, though these are less about physical transformation and more about mental preparation. The trials of the dreams involves the consumption of a special elixir that induces vivid, prolonged hallucinations, visions that the witches believe help to prepare the mind for the psychological toll of their profession. The trials are only part of the story, though what matters as much, perhaps more, is the training that surrounds them. The years of sword work, of sign practice, of learning to mix potions and apply bombs and track prey through trackless wilderness. The schools are as much about teaching as about transformation, and the best schools combine both elements into a curriculum that has been refined over centuries. Let us speak now of the Wolf School specifically, because it is the one we know best, the one that has produced the most famous witches, and the one whose history is most completely documented. Kaer Morhen has stood in these mountains for over 1,000 years, though the current structure is younger, built after the original fortress was destroyed during a pogrom against the witches in the 13th century. The mountain setting is not accidental. The founders of the Wolf School understood that their students needed to be isolated from the world they would eventually serve. In the mountains, there are no distractions, no taverns to spend coin in, no tavern wenches to court, no comfortable beds to soften a warrior's edge. Only the training ground, the armory, the library, and the mountains themselves, ever present and unconcerned with human affairs. The training begins at dawn, before the sun has fully crested the eastern peaks. The cold at this altitude is brutal, the kind of cold that seeps through clothing and settles into bone. The students run, bare-chested, through the snow if it is winter, through the dusty courtyard if it is summer. They run until their lungs burn and their legs tremble, and then they run some more. This is not cruelty. This is foundation building. A witcher who cannot run, who cannot outlast his prey, is a witcher who will die young. After running comes sparring. Wooden swords first, then steel, then silver. The students learn to fight in pairs, in groups, against multiple opponents. They learn to use the terrain, the walls, the rocks, the snow. They learn that a witcher is never unarmed, never truly helpless, because even without a sword, the signs provide options. They learn that the signs are not magic in the way that mage magic is magic, but something more fundamental, more instinctive, an extension of will rather than of knowledge. The wolf symbolism runs deep in this school. The students are organized into packs, each led by an older student who serves as the alpha. They learn to hunt together, to move together, to think as a single organism with many bodies. When they eventually leave Kaer Morhen, they will hunt alone for the most part, but the lessons of the pack remain. They know how to work with others when the need arises. They know the value of trust. Vesemir is the oldest witcher at Kaer Morhen during the period we are discussing. He has trained witchers for over 2 centuries, though he was made a witcher relatively late during his teenage years rather than as a child. He remembers a time when Kaer Morhen was full, when dozens of students filled its halls. That time is gone now, lost in a catastrophe that the school has never fully recovered from. But Vesemir continues his work because the work must continue. The Cat School takes a very different approach. Where the Wolf School values community and tradition, the Cat School values individual excellence and adaptability. The Cat School has no permanent home, no fortress like Kaer Morhen, where students gather for years of intensive training. Instead, the Cat School operates as a mobile organization, with instructors who travel the continent and identify promising candidates wherever they may be found. This makes the Cat School harder to track, harder to study, harder to understand. But the students who emerge from it are among the most skilled fighters in the world, trained from childhood in an environment that has no room for weakness. They learn to kill with their bare hands, with common objects, with poisons that leave no trace. They learn to become anyone, to assume any identity, to move through the world as ghosts. The Cat School's philosophy is built around the concept of adaptability. A witcher of the Cat School can fight with swords, with daggers, with a staff, with nothing at all. They learn to use their environment as a weapon, to turn an enemy's strength against them. They are taught that every fight is a puzzle, and that the solution is always available if you look hard enough. But this philosophy comes at a cost. The Cat School produces witchers who are often considered unstable, even by the standards of their profession. The emphasis on individual excellence, on the need to always be the best, creates personalities that can be difficult to manage. Cat school witches have a reputation for being reckless, for taking unnecessary risks, for caring more about their own glory than about the job that needs to be done. Some say the cat school was driven from the continent entirely after a particularly infamous incident involving a northern king and a political assassination. Others claim that remnants of the school survive in hidden enclaves, continuing their work in the shadows. What we know for certain is that cat school witches become rare as the centuries pass, their numbers diminished by conflict, by age, by the simple mathematics of a profession that rarely allows for peaceful retirement. The Griffin School presents yet another approach, founded, according to legend, by a witcher who had been trained by mages and who believed that the two disciplines could be perfectly integrated. The Griffin School occupies a unique position in the hierarchy of monster hunting traditions. Griffin School witches are scholars as much as warriors, trained in the theoretical foundations of magic as well as the practical applications of steel. The fortress of the Griffin School stands on a mountain peak even higher than Kaer Morhen, so high that clouds drift through its courtyards, and the air is so thin that students must acclimatize before they can train effectively. The architecture reflects the school's dual nature, with separate wings for martial and magical training, each equipped with the specialized facilities each discipline requires. Students at the Griffin School learn to cast signs with a finesse that other witches cannot match, where a wolf school witcher might use Ard to simply push an enemy back. A Griffin witcher has learned to shape the sign, to focus it, to control its intensity. Their signs are weapons of precision, capable of effects that would be impossible for witches trained in more traditional methods. But this refinement comes with its own limitations. The Griffin School's emphasis on magical training means that its graduates spend less time on physical conditioning than their counterparts at other schools. They are still superior to ordinary humans in every measurable way, but in direct combat against a wolf or cat school witcher, they are often at a disadvantage. The Griffin School's approach is to avoid such confrontations whenever possible, to engage enemies from range using signs and bombs, to use intelligence and preparation to compensate for raw physical inferiority. The Viper School is the most secretive of the major institutions, the one we know least about, and the one that inspires the most fear. Viper School witches are specialists in assassination, in the use of poison, in the quiet elimination of targets who would be impossible to kill by conventional means. They operate in the shadows of political intrigue, employed by kings and merchants and anyone else who can afford their services. Training at the Viper School begins with an immunity program. Students are given trace amounts of poison every day for years, gradually increasing the dosage until their bodies can withstand toxins that would kill an ordinary person within minutes. The process is agonizing, slow, and designed to remake the student's entire physiology around the principle of survival against poison. The Viper School's fortress, if indeed it has one, has never been definitively located. Some scholars believe it lies somewhere in the Mahakam Mountains. Others place it in the wild territories beyond Nilfgaard's borders. What we do know is that Viper School witches learn to become walking poison factories, their bodies producing toxins that can be delivered through cuts, through drinks, through the simple act of proximity. A Viper witcher can kill with a touch, or with a word, or simply by being in the same room as a target for long enough. The witches of the Viper School are the ones other witches tell stories about, the ones that inspire fear even among their own kind. They are the consummate professionals, interested in nothing but the job and the payment, unfazed by moral considerations that might give other witches pause. They have no code of honor, no tradition of helping the helpless. They are tools, pure and simple, and they embrace this role with something that approaches religious devotion. The Bear School is the simplest and, in many ways, the most brutal of the major institutions. Founded later than the others, the Bear School emerged from a desire to create witches who could face the largest and most dangerous creatures without fear, while other schools emphasized speed, precision, and magical ability. The Bear School focused on a single attribute: overwhelming strength. Bear School witches are heavy bruisers, built like siege engines, capable of swinging swords that would be too heavy for ordinary men to lift. They wear reinforced armor that other witches would find impossibly burdensome. They do not dodge, do not dance around their opponents, do not rely on finesse. They simply advance, absorbing damage and deliver devastating blows that end fights quickly and definitively. The training reflects these priorities. Where other schools spend hours on footwork and agility drills, the Bear School focuses on strength training, on building the muscle mass that will allow its graduates to wield their massive swords effectively. The mutagens used are designed to enhance physical power above all other attributes, creating witches whose bodies are essentially biological weapons. Bear School witches are not stupid. Whatever the other schools might claim, they are simply focused on a different set of priorities. They leave the tracking and analysis to others, content to let their companions identify the enemy's weaknesses while they handle the business of destruction. They are the anvil to other schools' hammers, the immovable object against which all manner of terrible monsters have broken themselves over the centuries. There were other schools as well, lesser institutions that rose and fell over the centuries. The Manticore School, operating from the Zerrikanian deserts, producing witches who specialized in fighting the bizarre creatures that haunted that harsh landscape. The Crane School, founded by disgraced knights who brought their martial traditions into the witcher profession. These schools never achieved the prominence of the 5 major institutions, but they contributed their own traditions, their own techniques, to the larger tapestry of monster hunting knowledge. And then there were the schools that died. The schools that burned or were destroyed by angry mobs, or simply faded away as their student populations dwindled and their masters grew too old to continue. Kaer Morhen itself came close to this fate, attacked by a mob that had been whipped into a frenzy by stories of witcher atrocities, real and imagined. The original fortress was destroyed, its archives burned, its teachers killed. Only a handful of students survived, and from them, the school was rebuilt, smaller and more cautious than before. This history of violence has shaped the witcher schools profoundly. They know, in their bones, that the world does not trust them, that ordinary people fear them, resent them, would destroy them if they could. This knowledge creates a bond between witches of all schools, a recognition that they are set apart, that they must rely on each other, because no one else will protect them. When witches meet on the road, they may be wary, they may test each other, but they do not fight. They share news, share information, share the occasional drink. They are brothers and sisters, separated by geography and philosophy, but united by the trials they have survived. Let us return now to Kaer Morhen, to the cold stone halls where the Wolf School continues its ancient work. It is evening, and the light is failing over the mountains. In the great hall, A fire crackles in the massive hearth, casting dancing shadows on walls that have seen 1,000 years of such fires. A handful of witches sit around the flames, their enhanced senses detecting each other's heartbeats, each other's breathing, the subtle tension in each other's muscles. They do not speak much. Witches are not given to conversation for its own sake, and the silence between them is comfortable, companionable. One of them is young, perhaps 20, still raw from his final trial, still adjusting to the changes in his body and mind. The others are older, scarred, each carrying their own collection of wounds that have healed and wounds that never quite did. Outside, the wind rises. It howls around the towers, finds cracks in the ancient stonework, whistles through spaces that have never been properly sealed. Somewhere in the fortress, a door slams, the sound echoing through empty corridors. The young witcher flinches, an instinctive reaction that he immediately suppresses. One of the older ones notices, and there is the faintest hint of a smile in the firelight. You watch them from across the hall, invisible in the shadows, your presence undetected by even their formidable senses. You are not really there, of course. You are lying in bed, perhaps, or stretched out on a sofa, eyes closed, breath slow. But for a moment, you are there with them, in that firelit hall, surrounded by the mountains and the darkness and the weight of centuries. What does it mean to be a witcher? This is the question that haunts the halls of every school, the question that each student must eventually answer for themselves. They are not soldiers, whatever the kings might wish. They are not heroes, whatever the ballads might claim. They are something else, something that ordinary language struggles to capture. They are the ones who stand between humanity and the darkness. Not because they are brave, though many of them are. Not because they are virtuous, though many of them try to be. They stand in that gap because they were made for it, because they were chosen or taken or sold into this life, because the mutagens that flow through their blood demand purpose and meaning and the exercise of the abilities they have been given. A witcher cannot farm, not for long. The enhanced senses become maddening in quiet places. The preternatural strength makes delicate work impossible. The accelerated healing turns minor injuries into inconveniences that disrupt the rhythms of ordinary life. Witches can live among ordinary people, can pass among them for limited periods, but they can never truly belong to them. They are exiles by biology, citizens of a country that exists only in the spaces between worlds. And yet, the witches return to their schools, year after year. When the winters grow too harsh for traveling, they maintain the fortresses that have become their temples, their homes, the only places where they are not strangers. They train new generations of students, passing on knowledge that has been accumulated over centuries, hoping that these children will survive what they survived, will become what they became. The old witcher by the fire rises, joints cracking in the way that witcher joints sometimes do, the healing process not being perfect. He walks to the window and looks out at the darkness, at the mountains that have stood here since before humans walked the continent, that will stand here long after the witches are gone. The others watch him, respectfully silent, knowing that he is thinking of friends who died, of students he lost, of the long road that has brought him to this moment. He turns back to the fire, and his face is unreadable in the flickering light. But something in his posture suggests acceptance, perhaps even peace. He has done what he was made to do. He has hunted the monsters and protected the innocent and survived another year. For a witcher, this is enough. This has to be enough. The young witcher speaks, for the first time in hours. His voice is different now, rougher than it was before the trials, the mutagens having affected his vocal cords, along with everything else. He asks a question, something simple, something practical. Where should he go this winter? What contracts should he seek when the pass is clear? The old witcher considers the question. The fire crackles. Outside, the wind continues its ancient song, indifferent to the concerns of witches and monsters and the petty affairs of human kingdoms. Finally, he answers, and his answer is the same answer that witches have given for centuries, the answer that binds all of them together across all their differences of school and philosophy and personality. Where the monster is, that is where you go. That is where we all go. The monster is always out there, waiting. And as long as there are monsters, there will be witches to hunt them. That is the purpose. That is the meaning. That is the life. The young witcher nods. He has heard this answer before, from other witches in other halls. He will hear it again, many times, in many places. But hearing it now, in this moment, in this firelit room, surrounded by the mountains and the darkness and the weight of history, it means something different. It means that he is not alone. It means that he belongs to something larger than himself. It means that the path he has chosen, or that chose him, has a destination, even if he cannot see it clearly. The fire burns lower. The night deepens. Somewhere in the mountains, a creature howls, the sound lonely and predatory and utterly inhuman. The witches in the hall hear it, and something shifts in their expressions, some ancient instinct rising to the surface. They are hunters. They have always been hunters, and the hunt is never truly over. You begin to drift. The boundaries between yourself and the scene begin to soften. The fire's warmth is a memory more than a sensation. The wind's howl is a distant thing, barely audible now. You are still in the hall, still watching, still present, but you are also elsewhere, floating in that gentle space between waking and sleeping, where stories live and grow and eventually release their hold. The Witcher schools will continue. The trial of the grasses will continue. Boys and girls, because girls have always been eligible, though they are rarer, will lie on stone tables and scream as the mutagens tear through them. Some will die, some will survive, and those who survive will take up swords and signs and venture out into a world that fears and needs them in equal measure. This is the truth of the Witcher schools, not the glory that the ballads promise, not the horror that the rumors suggest, but something in between, something more complicated and more human than either. Witches are people who have been remade into something new, something strange, something that the world does not quite know how to categorize. They carry within them the capacity for terrible violence and profound compassion, for cold professionalism and unexpected kindness. They are what the world made them, and they have made a life within the space that the world allows. Kaer Morhen stands in the mountains, cold and silent, waiting for the spring. The fires will die, the witches will depart, and the fortress will settle into its long annual sleep. But the memories will remain, as they always remain, in the stone and the shadows and the wind that never quite stops blowing. And somewhere, some night, another young person will lie awake and wonder what it would be like to be a witcher, to run with the wolves, to see in the dark, to be more than human. The answer, if there is one, is that it is heavy. The answer is that it is lonely. The answer is that it is beautiful. In its way, in the way that mountains are beautiful, in the way that the hunt under moonlight is beautiful, in the way that purpose is beautiful, even when that purpose is dark and dangerous. The answer is that you would not trade it if you were given the choice. Because this is who you are now. This is what you have become. The fire dies, the darkness comes, and in the silence, you find the peace you were looking for. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Let the world fall away. Imagine you are standing in a field at dusk. The sky above you stretches in long ribbons of violet and amber, colors bleeding into one another like watercolors left out in evening rain. The grass beneath your feet is pale and dry, the kind of grass that crunches softly when you shift your weight from one foot to the other. You are alone. There is no wind, but the air carries a chill that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It is the cold of deep places, the cold of spaces between. And then you hear it. First, the silence that precedes a storm, that strange, expectant quiet that fills the moment before the world changes. Your heart beats once, twice, and on the third beat, the horn sounds. It is distant, perhaps miles away, perhaps further, a sound that seems to travel through the earth itself rather than through the air. The note is long and low and carries within it something ancient, something that makes your bones ache without knowing why. It is the sound of riders approaching from a place that should not exist. This is the wild hunt, the Red Riders, the Lords of the Empty Sun. They have many names in many tongues, spoken in fear or reverence or simple desperate prayer. In the taverns of Temeria and Redania, mothers warn their children that the wild hunt will take them if they stray too far from the road after dark. In the temples of Melitele, priests speak of them as messengers of a doom that was written before the first stone was laid. And in the dark spaces of the world, where the veil between what is and what lies beneath grows thin, travelers speak their name only in whispers, for fear that speaking it aloud might call them down from the sky. You have heard of them. Perhaps you have seen them, even in dreams, that left you waking with tears on your cheeks and no memory of why. Perhaps you have glimpsed their silhouettes against a winter moon, riderless horses thundering across clouds that move too fast, too purposeful to be natural. Perhaps you have woken in the small hours of the morning with the taste of snow on your tongue and the echo of hoofbeats fading in your ears. These are not coincidences. In the world of The Witcher, nothing is ever truly a coincidence. To understand the wild hunt, you must first understand where they come from. They are not demons summoned from the depths of hell, though that is what the Church of the Eternal Fire would have you believe. They are not spirits of the dead, though villages burned by their passing often speak of them as such, pointing to the hollow eyes of the riders and the grey pallor of their skin, and seeing in these things the mark of the grave. The wild hunt are not from your world at all. They are from another place entirely, another reality that exists alongside your own, like a page pressed against a page, separated by nothing more than the thinnest membrane of possibility. They are the NL, the elves of the apple tree, though there are no apples where they dwell. The name is old, older than the languages you speak, older than the stones of Kaer Morhen, older perhaps than the conjunction of the spheres itself. They call their world by a name that has no direct translation, a word that means something like home, and something like nowhere, and something like the place where all the lost things eventually return. In the Elder speech, the language of the Enside, the elves who remained in your world after the worlds collided. This place is called Tirnalia, the land of the eternal sun, a name that carries within it a longing so deep it has become indistinguishable from grief. Picture it, if you can, a world where the sun never quite sets, where the light holds a quality that is both warmer and stranger than anything you have known. The NL live in towers of white stone that climb so high they disappear into perpetual dawn, and they move through their world with the ease of creatures who have never known hunger or cold or the slow creeping weight of mortality. They are beautiful, these elves, beautiful in the way that lightning is beautiful, in the way that a blade held at your throat is beautiful. Their features are sharp and fine, as if carved from something harder than flesh. Their eyes hold colors that do not exist in your world, shades that seem to shift when you look at them directly, that slide from violet to silver to something deeper, something that carries the weight of stars. They lived this way for countless ages, the NL in their towered city beneath the eternal sun. They did not know your world, not then. They knew that other worlds existed, that the branching tree of possibility extended in every direction, but they had no cause to look outward. What need had they for other places when their own was so perfect, so complete? They had magic that would seem like miracles to your scholars, arts that your poets could not dream, and they lived in a state that your philosophers might call paradise, though they would use a different word, a word that means something like enough. But perfection is a kind of prison in its own way, and eventually, as all things do, the contentment of the NL began to change. The change came slowly, as all catastrophic things do. The first sign was a restlessness that no one could name. Elves who had spent centuries in quiet contemplation began to feel the pull of something they could not identify. They looked at the branches of the apple tree that grew at the center of their city, the great tree whose roots reached down through all the worlds, whose branches spread out through all possible realities, and they felt for the first time that they did not truly understand it. The tree had always been there. The NL had always harvested its fruit, the apples that held within them the essence of other worlds. But now, looking at it with fresh eyes, they saw how much they did not know. They began to experiment carefully at first, sending explorers through the branches into worlds adjacent to their own. These worlds were different, yes, strange, in ways that could not be anticipated, but they were not hostile. The NL walked among strange flora and fauna, catalogued wonders that had no names in their language, and returned home safely, laden with new knowledge and new curiosities. For a time, this was enough. The expeditions satisfied the restlessness, at least for a while. But the while grew shorter with each journey, and the restlessness returned more quickly, more insistently, until the elves found themselves looking not just at the branches of the tree, but at its roots, at the deep, dark places where the tree drank from the very source of what it meant to exist. It was then that they discovered the conjunction of the spheres. Now, you have already heard something of the conjunction, perhaps, in stories told of how the world came to be as it is. You know that it was a collision of worlds, a moment when the boundaries between realities shattered and the beasts of chaos poured through into a world that had no defenses against them. You know that it was the conjunction that brought magic to your world, and with magic came the elves and dwarves and the other elder races. You know that it was the conjunction that made your world what it is, a place of monsters and mystery, where the impossible is merely improbable and the improbable is merely Tuesday. But what you may not know is that the conjunction did not begin in your world. It began in the world of the NL. It began, in fact, with the tree at the center of Tirnalia, the great apple tree whose roots reached so deep that they touched something that should not have been touched, something that slumbered in the dark spaces beneath all existence. When the NL dug down through the roots of the tree, following their curiosity to its logical conclusion, they found what lay beneath, and what lay beneath found them. The name that the elder races have for this thing is not spoken aloud except in the most desperate of circumstances. The NL call it by a word that means the nothing that was always there, the absence that waits at the end of all things. Your scholars, those who have glimpsed fragments of the truth in forbidden texts and whispered rumors, call it the dark god, or simply the void. It is not a god in any sense that you would understand. It is not even truly a being. It is an unbeing, a hunger so vast and so patient that it makes the concepts of malice or intention seem almost quaint by comparison. It has no form, no will that you could comprehend. It simply is, in the way that darkness is, in the way that silence is. And when the NL reached down through the roots of the apple tree, they woke it. The waking was slow. At first, a tremor in the foundations of their world, a sense of something shifting in the quality of the light. The elves noticed, but they did not understand. How could they? They had never known anything like this. Their magic, which had always seemed limitless, suddenly seemed fragile. Their towers, which had stood since before memory, developed cracks that no spell could mend. Their eternal sun began to fade, not dramatically, not all at once, but in increments so small that they could almost be ignored. Almost, but not quite. The elves of Tirnalia watched their world die by degrees. They tried everything they could think of to stop it. They poured all of their vast, magical knowledge into finding a cure. But the disease was not one that their knowledge could address. The void was not a problem to be solved. It was a consequence to be endured. Their world had touched something that should not have been touched, and now it was paying the price. The eternal sun grew dimmer. The towers began to crumble. The apple tree at the center of their city started to wither, its branches reaching out desperately across all the worlds, seeking something that might save it. And in their desperation, the NL found another way. They could not save their world. That much became clear as the centuries passed and the dimming accelerated. But they could leave it. The tree at the center of their city, the great apple tree whose roots reached down into the darkness and whose branches spread out through all possible realities, offered them a path. They could not save Tirnalia, but they could find another world to call home. They could harvest the fruit of another reality, as they had always done, and they could make that world their own. They could push through the membrane between what is and what might be, and they could claim new territory for a dying people. The plan was simple, as such things go. They would cross over into another world, a world of fresh possibilities, and they would take what they needed. The young, the strong, the vital. They would bring them back to Tirnalia and use their life force to restore what had been lost. It was not a kind plan, but the NL had stopped thinking about kindness. They were thinking about survival, and survival, as anyone who has lived through hard times knows, has a way of narrowing one's moral vision. This is where the wild hunt begins. Not as a legend told to frighten children, but as a military operation conceived by a desperate people in a dying world. The NL did not call themselves the Wild Hunt. Not then. That name came later, given to them by the humans, whose worlds they invaded, whose children they took. The elves had a different name for their raiding parties, a name that meant something like the harvesters, something like those who go forth to bring back what is needed. It was a clinical term, stripped of poetry or moral weight. They were not raiders, in their own eyes. They were physicians attending to a patient, and the patient was dying. The first raids were crude, clumsy, the fumbling attempts of an ancient race learning to operate in a reality that did not obey their rules. The Anel had never needed soldiers before. Their magic had been sufficient for everything their world required. But magic behaves differently in different realities, and the magic that had sustained them in Ternalia was unreliable in the worlds beyond. They discovered this the hard way, losing entire raiding parties to mishaps that would have been impossible at home. A sorceress who could call lightning from a clear sky found that here the lightning refused to come. A warrior whose blade had never known defeat discovered that his enemies could die, but so could he. They were learning the Anel, learning what it meant to be vulnerable. But they adapted, as all things do. Slowly, over generations, they refined their techniques. They learned which of their magics worked in this new reality and which needed to be modified. They learned the patterns of the world they were invading, the rhythms of its seasons, the weaknesses of its inhabitants. They learned to move quickly, silently, taking what they needed and vanishing before the humans could mount an effective response. And they learned, most importantly, that the humans of this world were not all the same. There were many peoples here, spread across many lands, and some of those peoples were easier to prey upon than others. Think of them, if you will. The first humans who ever saw the Wild Hunt. They would not have known that name. They would not have understood what they were seeing. They would have seen riders descending from the sky on horses that moved like smoke, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. They would have seen faces that were not quite faces, eyes that reflected light in ways that eyes should not. They would have heard the horn, that low and mournful sound, and they would have felt something in their chests that they could not name, a resonance that predated language, a recognition of something ancient and predatory. And then, the riders would have come for their children, taking them without mercy, without explanation, vanishing back into the sky as if they had never been there at all. What must that have been like? To see something so far beyond your understanding that your mind could not even process it properly. To watch your daughter or your son taken by creatures that seemed to belong to nightmare. To run after them, only to find that the ground beneath your feet had become stone, that your voice had been stolen from your throat, that you could do nothing but watch as your child was taken to a place you could not follow. This was the reality of the early raids. This was the cost paid by ordinary people in ordinary villages, people who had done nothing except be born in a world that the Anel had decided to harvest. The stories that grew from these encounters became legend, and the legends became myth, and the myths became the stories your grandmother told you when you were small. The Wild Hunt will get you if you stray from the path. The Red Riders come for children who do not behave. These are not just warnings about danger. They are the echoes of genuine trauma, passed down through generations like a scar that never quite healed. The raids continued for centuries, the Anel refining their methods with each generation. They learned to be more efficient, more selective. They learned that not all children were equally valuable to them. There were some rare individuals with a particular kind of soul who could do things that other humans could not. These special children were worth more, much more, than ordinary captures. They could serve as vessels for the energy the Anel needed to survive. They could bridge the gap between their dying world and the worlds they harvested. They could, if the right circumstances aligned, do something that no ordinary human could ever do. One such child was born in Sintra, in the castle of Queen Calanthe, on the day of the pogrom. You know this child. You know her name and the shape of her fate. She is Ciri, daughter of Pavetta, granddaughter of the Lioness of Sintra. She is the one they called the Lady of Space and Time, the one whose bloodline carried a gift that had been dormant for generations, waiting to manifest in its fullest and most terrible form. She is the one the Wild Hunt wanted more than any other, the one whose capture would have meant everything to the NL, the one whose escape would eventually bring an end to their centuries-long harvesting. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. We will speak of Ciri soon enough. She is the center of the Wild Hunt's story, the axis around which their final chapter turns. But first, we must speak of their leader. We must speak of the king who rides at the head of the Red Riders, the one they call Eredin Breakla, the one whose face is hidden behind a mask of bone and whose eyes hold nothing that any living creature would recognize as mercy. Eredin was not always a monster. That is important to understand, if you wish to understand the Wild Hunt at all. He was born, as all things are born, without knowledge of what he would become. He was an Enel prince, heir to a throne that no longer existed, child of a civilization that was already dying when he first opened his eyes to the fading light of Ternalia. He grew up knowing that his world was ending. He grew up knowing that there was nothing he or anyone else could do to stop it. And he grew up with a single purpose burning in his heart, a purpose that his people shared, but that he, in the end, embraced more fully than any other. Survival. His survival. His people's survival. The survival of everything the NL had been and everything they might yet become. This was the fire that drove Eredin, the flame that consumed everything softer in his nature, until there was nothing left but the cold necessity of his goal. He was not evil, not in the way that evil is usually understood. He did not take joy in suffering for its own sake. He did not torment the children he took for some dark pleasure. He took them because taking them was necessary, because without them, his people would perish. And the preservation of his people was the only value that remained to him after everything else had been stripped away by the slow death of his world. This does not make him good. It does not make him right. It does not make the suffering he caused any less real or any less terrible. But it makes him understandable, and understanding is the first step toward any kind of reckoning with the darkness that lives in the world. Eredin was not born cruel. He was made cruel by circumstance, by the impossible position in which his people found themselves, by the choices they made when all the choices were bad ones. He chose survival at any cost. He chose his people over the peoples of other worlds. He chose to become a monster so that his people would not have to become extinct. There is a kind of logic to it, even if it is a logic that most living beings would reject. Most living beings are fortunate enough never to have been tested in the way Eredin was tested. Most living beings never have to make the choice between their own kind and another kind. Most living beings get to believe, in the comfortable safety of their daily lives, that they would always choose mercy, that they would always do the right thing. But Eredin was not given that luxury. Eredin was given a dying world and an impossible solution, and he took the solution because the alternative was unthinkable. Let us move now to a place where the light is different, where the air carries the scent of something you cannot quite name. You are walking through a forest, but this is not a forest you have ever seen. The trees here have bark that shifts color as you watch it, moving through shades of silver and blue, and their leaves make no sound when the wind passes through them, because there is no wind here, only a stillness that feels almost liquid, as if the air itself has been thickened into something that holds its shape. You are walking because you have been told to walk, though you do not remember who told you, and you are not afraid, though you know on some level that you should be. This is the world of the Enel, or what remains of it. These are the last days of Ternalia, though you would not know that from looking. The trees are beautiful, the light is gentle, the silence is profound, and seems to hold within it a kind of peace. A peace that your exhausted mind accepts gratefully, without asking what it costs. You are safe here. Something tells you. You are safe and warm and wanted. This is the lie that the Enel told themselves as their world crumbled around them. This is the lie that allowed them to continue, to persist, to keep raiding and harvesting and taking children from worlds that did not deserve to be invaded. You are a child here. That much is clear. You are small and vulnerable, and you are being led through this beautiful forest by a figure whose face you cannot quite see, whose voice you cannot quite hear, whose hands are gentle on your shoulders. You trust this figure. You have no reason not to. You do not yet know where you are or why you are here. You do not yet know that you are a prisoner. You do not yet know that the gentle hands guiding you through this forest are hands that will eventually lead you to a tower where you will be drained of everything you are, your life force harvested to sustain a dying people who have decided that your existence matters less than their continuation. This is what it felt like for the children who were taken. Not all of them, not always, but enough of them, often enough, that the wild hunt became a nightmare that parents told each other in whispered voices. The children who were taken did not always know they were being taken. Sometimes they were given dreams first, dreams of a beautiful forest, dreams of a gentle figure who promised safety and warmth and an end to whatever pain they had known in their short lives. The Enel had magic that could reach into sleeping minds, that could plant suggestions deep enough to make a child walk willingly into the arms of those who would destroy them. This was the mercy they offered. This was the kindness they showed. They made it not hurt as much as they could for the ones who would not be saved. But some children were saved. That is the other part of the story, the part that gives hope in the midst of so much sorrow. Some children were saved because someone cared enough to save them, because someone was willing to risk everything to bring them back from the place where the wild hunt had taken them. And the greatest of these saviors was a witcher, a mutated monster hunter, with eyes like a cat and a heart that had been hardened by years of solitary wandering. His name was Geralt of Rivia, and he would do what seemed impossible. He would enter the world of the Enel and take back a child who had been claimed by their king. This is where the stories converge, where the grand mythology of the wild hunt meets the personal story of one girl and the man who would become her father. Ciri was not meant to be taken to Ternalia. Her journey there was an accident, a consequence of the chaos that surrounded her birth and the forces that had been circling her bloodline for generations. She was supposed to die on the day of the pogrom, her powers manifesting uncontrollably and destroying her in the process. But she survived, and her survival set in motion a chain of events that would eventually bring her to the attention of the wild hunt in ways that both they and she could not have anticipated. Erden wanted Ciri because her powers were unlike anything the Enel had ever encountered. She could open portals between worlds. She could step through space and time as if they were doorways, moving from one reality to another with a thought. She could do this because of her bloodline, because of the ancient gift that had been awakened in her, because somewhere in her ancestry there was a connection to the elder blood, the lineage that could trace itself back to the first elves who had ever walked beneath the branches of the great apple tree. Ciri was not just valuable to the Enel, she was essential. With her, they could go anywhere, do anything. take what they needed from any world they chose. Without her, they were limited to what they could reach through their own diminished powers, and what they could reach was not enough. So they hunted her, across worlds, across centuries, across the long grey spaces between realities. The wild hunt versus Kail of Sintra. They took her once, briefly, before she escaped. They would take her again, if they could. They would take her and use her and drain her dry, because that was what they did, because that was the only way they knew to survive, because somewhere in the cold calculations of a dying king, the life of one human girl weighed less than the continued existence of an entire civilization. But Ciri was not just a human girl. She was the lady of space and time, and she had friends who loved her. And one of those friends was a witcher who had decided, against all reason, that he would not let her go. There is a moment in every story like this where everything could go either way. A fulcrum moment, a pivot point, where the forces aligned on either side balance against each other, and the smallest action, the tiniest shift in weight, determines which way the whole edifice will fall. For the wild hunt, that moment came when Geralt of Rivia walked into Ternalia. He should not have survived. No human who entered that dying world had ever survived, not in all the long centuries of raids and harvesting. The Enel were too powerful, too ancient, too far beyond anything a witcher could handle. But Geralt walked in anyway, because that is what he did when someone he loved was in danger. He walked into the impossible, and he kept walking. What happened next is a story for another time, a story of towers and portals and a throne room where a king sat, waiting for a confrontation he believed he could not lose. But the outcome is what matters here. The outcome and what it meant for the wild hunt. Geralt did not kill Eredin. That would come later, in another place and another time, in a final confrontation that would end the king of the Red Riders for good. But in Ternalia, in the dying world of the Enel, Geralt did not kill Eredin. That would come later, in another place and another time, in a final confrontation that would end the king of the Red Riders for good. But in Ternalia, in the dying world of the Enel, Geralt did not kill Eredin. That would come later, in another place and another time, in a final confrontation that would end the king of the Red Riders for good. But in Ternalia, in the dying world of the Enel, Geralt did not kill Eredin. That would come later, in another place and another time, in a final confrontation that would end the king of the Red Riders for good. But in Ternalia, in the dying world of the Enel, Geralt did something more important than killing. He took Ciri and he ran, and he did not stop running until they were back in their own world, back on their own soil, back in the place where the light was different and the air tasted of rain instead of the nothing that was always there. The wild hunt did not take Ciri that day, and because they did not take Ciri that day, they would never take her at all. Because they did not take her, they could not restore their world. Because they could not restore their world. The slow dimming of Ternalia continued. The eternal sun grew dimmer and dimmer until there was no sun at all, until the towers of white stone stood in a darkness that had no end, until the Ain-El, who remained, were forced to make a choice that they had spent centuries avoiding. Some of them chose to die. There is a dignity in that, a dignity that we should not overlook. When it became clear that their world could not be saved, when the last flickers of hope sputtered out like candles in a wind that came from nowhere, some of the Enel simply stopped. They sat down in the places they had always loved, in the gardens of the White Towers, in the shadow of the great apple tree, and they let go. They did not fight or rage or rail against the injustice of it. They accepted, because acceptance was all that remained to them. But not all of them accepted. Some of them could not accept, could not let go of the hunger that had driven them for so long. These were the ones who became the wild hunt in truth, the ones who rider across the sky in the darkness between worlds, who still hunt for the children they need to survive. They are diminished now, fewer in number, their powers reduced by the death of their world, but they persist. They will always persist, because that is what hunger does. Hunger does not die when it is unsatisfied. It only grows. This is what the wild hunt has become, in the end. Not an army of conquest, not a harvesting force from a dying civilization, but something more pitiable and more dangerous in equal measure. They are ghosts now, echoes of a purpose that can never be fulfilled, riding across the dark spaces between worlds in search of something that no longer exists. They are the Red Riders who come in the night, whose horns sound across the winter sky, whose passing leaves frost on windows and terror in the hearts of those who see them. They are a cautionary tale, a nightmare made flesh, a reminder that the choices made long ago, in a dying world, still reverberate through all the worlds that remain. You are standing in the field again, the same field where we began, the one with the pale, dry grass that crunches beneath your feet. The sky is dark now, darker than it should be at this hour, and the stars that should be visible are hidden behind clouds that move too fast, that flow across the heavens like a river flowing toward the sea. You look up, and for a moment, just a moment, you see them. Shapes against the clouds, riders on horses that are not quite horses, horns that sound in a register that seems to bypass your ears and go directly to your bones. You watch them pass overhead, and you feel the cold that always accompanies them, the cold of places between, and you understand, in a way that is deeper than thought, what they are and where they came from and why they ride. They do not see you. They are too high, too far, too absorbed in their endless hunt. They are riding towards something they will never reach, chasing a prey they will never catch, and the horn sounds on and on, a sound that is both triumphant and mournful, a sound that says, "We are still here, we are still searching, we have not given up, even though giving up is the only thing left to do." The riders pass. The clouds slow. The stars emerge one by one, like eyes opening after a long sleep. The cold recedes, replaced by the gentler chill of a late autumn night, and the grass beneath your feet seems softer now, less dry, as if dew is beginning to form in the darkness. You are alone again, but it is a different kind of alone than before. It is the kind of alone that feels like peace, the kind that comes after a long journey, the kind that asks nothing of you except that you remain. Let us speak now of what it means to be hunted, not by the wild hunt specifically, though that is the form our minds have chosen to illustrate the point, but hunted in the broader sense, the sense that touches all living things. We are all hunted, in one way or another. We are hunted by our pasts, by the choices we have made and the ones we have failed to make. We are hunted by our futures, by the uncertainties that await us and the fears we carry about what those uncertainties might contain. We are hunted by time itself, by the relentless forward march of moments that brings us inexorably toward an ending we cannot avoid. The wild hunt rides because it cannot stop riding. The riders cannot set down their horns or dismount from their impossible horses, because the moment they do, they will have to face what they are, and what they are is a tragedy without resolution. So they ride across the darkness between worlds, and they hunt, and they do not think about whether the hunt will ever end, because thinking about it would require them to confront the possibility that it will not, and that confrontation would break them in ways that even their ancient magic cannot mend. Is this so different from our own lives? We all have our hunts, our endless pursuits, our desperate searches for something that will make us feel complete. We chase after wealth, or love, or recognition, or peace, or any of the countless things that we believe we need, but that move away from us, no matter how fast we run. We are all, in our own ways, the wild hunt, riding through a darkness we do not understand, chasing a goal we will never reach, telling ourselves that the next world, the next moment, the next breakthrough will be the one that finally makes everything right. And perhaps it will. Perhaps the hunt will end, one day, for each of us. Perhaps we will find what we are looking for, or perhaps we will simply grow tired enough to stop looking, to sit down in a field like this one and watch the stars emerge and feel, for the first time in as long as we can remember, that we are enough, that we have done enough, that the hunting, at last, can be done. The night is deepening now. You can feel it in the quality of the darkness, in the way the shadows have become more certain of themselves, more settled into their shapes. The cold is gentle, the kind of cold that is more soothing than threatening. The cold of a room where you have fallen asleep by accident and woken to find a blanket draped over you by someone who cares. You are not cold. You are not afraid. You are simply here, in this field, in this moment, watching the last traces of the wild hunt fade into the spaces where they belong. They will return. They always return. That is the nature of nightmares, the nature of hungers that cannot be satisfied. But not tonight. Tonight, the field is yours. Tonight, the sky is clear, and the stars are bright, and the grass beneath you holds the memory of summer warmth, even as autumn waits in the wings with its promise of rest. Tonight, the hunters are elsewhere, riding through other darknesses, chasing other phantoms, and you are here, and here is enough. Breathe in. The air tastes of earth and distant rain, of the decay that feeds new growth, of all the cycles that turn and turn and turn without ever truly beginning or ending. Breathe out. Let the tension go. Let the story settle into your bones like an old song that you have always known but never quite remembered. The wild hunt rides and will ride, and the riders will never find what they seek. But that is their burden, not yours. Tonight, you are free to sleep. Tonight, you are free to rest. Tonight, the only hunt that matters is the one that leads you deeper into the quiet dark, the one that ends not in triumph or tragedy, but in the simple, profound relief of surrender. Sleep now. The field will be here when you wake, and the stars, and the gentle cold of autumn's approach. The wild hunt will be here too, somewhere in the darkness between worlds, still riding, still searching, still impossibly, tragically alive. But they cannot reach you here, not in this place, not in this moment. You are safe and warm and very, very tired, and the only thing left to do is let go. Let go. Let go. Close your eyes. Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Imagine you are standing in a small clearing at dusk, not a grand forest, not an ancient woodland that swallows light whole, just a small clearing where a path splits into two, and at the fork stands a low wooden building with smoke curling from a stone chimney. The light inside glows amber and warm through foggy windows. Somewhere nearby, a stream moves over stones with a sound like whispered secrets. You have been walking all day. Your boots are dusty. There is a pleasant ache in your calves, and your stomach has begun to remind you that the bread you ate at midday is a distant memory now. But you have found this place, this small sanctuary where the road forks, and ahead, through that weathered wooden door, there is warmth and food and the murmur of voices. This is the image we want to carry with you tonight. Not the battles, not the monster hunts, not the great sweeping destinies that shake the foundations of empires, but this, a waystation, a place where roads meet, a place where the weary can set down their burdens just for a while and remember what it feels like to be warm. The Witcher world is often described in terms of danger, of monsters roaming the spaces between villages, of political machinations that can swallow a kingdom in a season, of elves displaced and dwarves persecuted, and humans squabbling over scraps of land that mean nothing to anyone but themselves. And all of that is true. The continent is a dangerous place. History has made it so. But within that danger, something remarkable persists. The instinct to build a hearth, to hang a sign above a door, to cook a meal for strangers and ask nothing in return, but coin enough to keep the fire burning through the night. This impulse, this stubborn refusal to let cruelty have the final word, appears again and again in the stories of the Witcher. It is the counterweight to all that darkness. And tonight, we want to sit with that warmth for a while. You push open the door and step inside. The first thing you notice is the smell, wood smoke and something savory. Perhaps a stew of root vegetables and salted pork simmering in a cauldron near the hearth. There is the earthy scent of damp cloaks drying by the fire, a faint trace of the herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters, rosemary perhaps, or sage, meant to keep the flies at bay, but filling the air with something green and clean. Your nose knows you are welcome before your eyes have adjusted to the dimness. The room is small, perhaps 20 feet long and 15 wide. The ceiling beams are low, dark with decades of smoke that has worked its way into the wood like memory. Lanterns hang from iron hooks, their flames dancing gently in some unfelt draft. A long table runs down the center, scarred and stained by years of elbows and cups and the occasional knife slip. Benches on either side. A few smaller tables pushed against the walls where couples or solitary travelers might eat without having to share their space with strangers. And there are people here. Not many, perhaps a handful. A merchant in a threadbare coat who looks up briefly when you enter and then returns to his ale. A woman by the fire reading a letter that has clearly been read many times before. The paper soft at the creases. Two young men in the corner, speaking in low voices with the particular intensity of those who have just met and are still deciding whether to trust each other. You find a seat. The bench creaks but holds. Within moments, a woman appears from behind a curtain at the back of the room. She is perhaps 50, perhaps older, with the kind of face that has seen everything and decided to find most of it amusing. She asks what you need. You ask for whatever is hot and filling. She nods and disappears. This is the moment. This small exchange. You are now part of this place, at least for tonight. The inn has accepted you into its rhythms. The fire will dry your cloak. The stew will fill your belly. The bed upstairs, if you need it, will be simple but clean, with straw mattresses that smell faintly of lavender from the sachets tucked beneath the pillows. This is the foundation upon which so many of the Witcher stories rest. Not the grand quests, not the fateful encounters, but these small waypoints, these places where the road-worn can catch their breath. Let us talk about inns. In the world of The Witcher, the inn occupies a particular and peculiar space. It is simultaneously the most mundane of establishments and the most important. In a world without instant communication, without reliable mail, without any guarantee that the town you left this morning will still be standing when you arrive there tomorrow, the inn is the one fixed point, the lighthouse in the fog, the hand extended across the dark. Consider the layout. An inn is almost always built at the intersection of roads. This is deliberate. The innkeeper is not building a business in the middle of nowhere, hoping travelers will stumble upon them. They are placing themselves precisely where roads converge, where the flows of people naturally pool and eddy. The road from Vizima to Oxenfurt, the crossroads at the edge of the Roven territory, the path that winds down from Kaya Morhen in the autumn, when witches leave the fortress to take contracts across the northern kingdoms. Every major route has its waypoints, its resting places, its pots of stew and tanksards of ale. These establishments range from the barely habitable to the genuinely comfortable. At the lower end, you might find a barn with stalls for horses and a loft where travelers sleep huddled together like sardines, their cloaks their only blankets. The air reeks of dung and sweat and smoke. The breakfast, if you can call it that, is hard bread and stale cheese, but it keeps you alive for another day on the road. At the higher end, there are establishments like the Seven Cats in Oxenfurt, or, in the games, the Herbalist's Sanctuary in the Greenhouse, though that is a different kind of refuge. But even in the main narrative, inns like the Bloody Baron's Tavern in Veelen serve a function beyond mere shelter. They are gathering places, the hearth at the center of community life. The Bloody Baron's establishment is a perfect example. It sits in a corner of Veelen that has seen better centuries. The Baron himself is a man broken by his own choices. His wife gone, his son fled, his soldiers drinking themselves into early graves, and yet the tavern endures. People still come. They still sit by the fire. They still trade news and rumors and the occasional smile, because the alternative is to sit alone in the dark, and human beings will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid that. There is a particular skill to running an inn in this world. The innkeeper must be a diplomat, a psychologist, a cook, and a businessman, often all at once. They must read their customers quickly, distinguishing the merchant with good coin from the bandit, looking for an easy mark. They must know when to pour another drink and when to suggest, gently, that perhaps the gentleman has had enough. They must keep their ears open without appearing to listen, because travelers let slip information over ale that they would never share in daylight. The best innkeepers are almost witches themselves. They have learned to see what is hidden. They have developed the patience to wait, and they have mastered the most important skill of all, making people feel welcome without asking too many questions. Consider the kinds of conversations that happen in places like this. A witcher walks in after a contract. He has just killed a Leshen in the woods outside town. His silver sword is still damp. There is blood on his leather gauntlets, probably not his own, though in this line of work, you can never be entirely certain. He sits in the corner. He orders food. He does not speak unless spoken to. What happens next depends on the quality of the inn. In a place run by someone with no imagination and less empathy, the witcher might be asked to leave. Fear makes people cruel, and witches inspire fear. But in a place with a good innkeeper, something different happens. The food arrives. Perhaps an extra portion, or a cup of something warming on the house. The innkeeper understands that this man, whatever he looks like, whatever stories the village folk tell about him, has done their community a service. The monster that was killing their livestock, terrorizing their children, desecrating their sacred places, is dead. Because of him, This is the quiet truth that the inns of the Witcher world often embody. They are places where the full complexity of a person can be acknowledged. Not the monster hunter, not the freak of nature, not the mutation. Just a person who walked a long road and killed something dangerous and is now very tired and would like to eat something hot. You have been sitting with your empty bowl for a while now. The merchant has left, nodding to the innkeeper as he goes. The woman by the fire has folded her letter away and is talking quietly with the innkeeper. The young men are laughing now, some wall broken down between them. The fire has burned down to a gentle glow, the logs settling with small sounds like the world exhaling. The innkeeper approaches you again. She asks if you need anything else. You shake your head. She pauses, looking at you with the kind of expression that suggests she is deciding something. She tells you there is a room upstairs if you need it. Small but clean. The best bed in the house, she says, though she says it with a wry smile that suggests the best is a relative term. She tells you the price. It is reasonable. You nod and stand, feeling the weight of the day in your legs and your back. As you climb the narrow stairs, you notice things. A painting on the wall, clearly old, showing a hunting scene with hounds and horses. A window at the end of the corridor that looks out over the clearing, the stars now visible in a sky, deepening to true dark. The smell of the room when you open the door, that lavender and straw, clean linen and wood polish. A small window facing east. A wash basin with water that has been drawn fresh. A candle already lit on the bedside table. This is the gift of the inn. Not luxury, not spectacle, but consideration. Someone thought about what you might need and had it ready. Someone lit the candle so you would not have to fumble in the dark. Someone opened the window a crack so the air could move, so you would not wake stuffy and strange. These small kindnesses, multiplied across thousands of inns and taverns and waystations, form a kind of invisible infrastructure, a web of care spun across the entire continent. And this brings us to something important about the Witcher world. The institutions may be failing, the kings may be corrupt, the armies may be massing for wars that will kill thousands. But the inns keep running, the bread keeps being baked, the water keeps being drawn from the well. Human beings keep doing the daily work of making life bearable for one another. This is not a small thing. In a world where magic has destabilized the very fabric of reality, where elves have been almost wiped from existence, where children are taken and mutated into something other than human, the humble inn represents something precious. It is the refusal to surrender. It is the insistence that warmth matters, that food shared is better than food eaten alone, that a stranger is not necessarily an enemy. Think about the character of Zoltan Chivay, if you have encountered him. The dwarf merchant who appears at various points in the stories, a friend to those who need help and a thorn in the side of those who deserve it. Zoltan understands this instinctively. He is not naive. He knows the world is dangerous. He has been attacked by bandits, cheated by merchants, and watched his people driven from their homes. And yet, he stops to help a stranger. He shares his fire. He offers a kind word. Because, he would say, if asked, what else is there? What is the point of surviving if you lose the part of yourself that can recognize another person's suffering? Let us sit with that for a moment. The moral architecture of the inn. When a witcher enters an inn, something interesting happens to the social dynamics of the room. Fear is the initial response, almost always. Witches are not beautiful. Their eyes, changed by the trials, carry a weight that makes ordinary people uncomfortable. Their scent, slightly different from baseline humans due to the alchemical changes wrought upon their bodies, can be detected by those with sensitive noses. They move with a predatory economy that reads, to the uninitiated, as threat. But fear can transform, and in the context of the inn, with its fire and its food, and its accumulated social rituals of welcome, the transformation often happens. The Witcher is seen eating. He is seen paying for what he receives. He is seen not causing trouble. One by one, the fears of the room begin to ease. Perhaps someone even speaks to him. Perhaps they ask about his work, with the mixture of fascination and horror that monster hunting always inspires. This is the function of the inn as a liminal space. It is a place where normal rules are suspended in certain ways. Enemies can sit at the same table and not fight because the inn demands a minimum of civility. The strange can be accommodated because the innkeeper has decided that coin is coin, regardless of who offers it. The weary can rest because the inn has made a promise, however unspoken, that here they will be safe. It is a fragile promise. It is broken sometimes. Bandits do use inns as hunting grounds, waiting for the right moment to rob the merchant who has had too much to drink. The Scoia'tael, those guerrilla fighters fighting for elven rights, sometimes use remote inns as meeting places. The Black Seething, that long ago plague, killed innkeepers along with everyone else. But the promise endures. It is made again and again by innkeepers who could not justify it economically, but make it anyway. It is kept by communities who understand in their bones that without these waypoints, the roads become unbearable. You are in your room now, lying on the bed, which is indeed simple but clean, the linen smelling of soap and dried lavender. The candle flame dances in the slight draft from the window outside. The darkness is complete, the kind of darkness that cities have largely forgotten, the darkness of a world where street lamps are not yet universal, and the night belongs to the creatures suited to it. You can hear, if you listen, the sounds of the inn settling. Floorboards creak as the innkeeper moves about downstairs, closing up for the night. The murmur of the stream reaches you, faint but constant. An owl calls somewhere in the trees, a sound so old and so perfectly suited to the night that it carries a kind of melancholy peace. This is the sound of safety. This is what the inn provides. Not just shelter, but the sounds of shelter. The evidence that others are near, that the night is being watched over by someone who has chosen to watch. Sleep begins to come. You feel it at the edges of your consciousness. The thoughts that have been circling all day begin to slow. The concerns about tomorrow, the memories of yesterday, the anxieties about things beyond your control, all of it begins to blur and soften. The lavender scent, the warmth of the quilt, the profound tiredness in your muscles and your bones. Let it come. Let the tiredness win. But before you drift entirely, let us stay with the image a little longer. The inn at the crossroads, the fire in the hearth, the people gathered around it, because there is something important about the company that gathers in these places. Not just the travelers passing through, but the regulars, the locals who come every evening for the same reason that water flows downhill. They have been working all day. They are tired, and there is something in the inn that their own homes do not provide. What is it? Perhaps it is the company. Perhaps it is the particular quality of firelight that makes everything look a little kinder. Perhaps it is simply the knowledge that here, in this room, no one is asking anything of you. You do not have to be a good father or a dutiful son or a reliable worker. You can just sit. You can just drink. You can just listen to other people talk and let their words wash over you like warm water. The inns of the Witcher world serve this function brilliantly. They are places where identity is temporarily suspended. You are not your role. You are not your duty. You are just a person in a room, sharing space with other people who are also, for this moment, simply people. Consider Dandelion, the poet, the minstrel, the teller of tales. He is drawn to these places like a moth to flame, and with good reason. An inn is the perfect stage for his art. There is an audience, there is a fire, there is an atmosphere of receptivity that the road rarely provides. A man on the road has places to be. A man in an inn has nowhere to be except where he is. Dandelion understands, perhaps better than anyone, that stories need a home. They need walls and warmth and the sound of a fire. The greatest tales, the ones that survive and pass from mouth to mouth across generations, are not born in palaces. They are born in places like this: inns and taverns, waystations and campfires. The conversation that starts because someone recognized the scar on your sword and asks about it. The story that someone tells because the wine has made them brave or sad or generous. This is how knowledge travels in a world without printing presses. This is how rumors become legend. This is how a witcher's deeds or misdeeds, depending on your perspective, become the subject of ballads that children will sing 100 years later. The Witcher himself is an interesting figure in this context. He does not tell stories. He does not sing songs. He does not craft narratives. And yet, he is the subject of more stories than almost anyone. Because the things he does are so extreme, so outside the bounds of normal experience, that they demand to be told. A man who fights monsters. A man who has been changed into something not quite human, but not quite something else either. A man who walks into danger for money, but sometimes, if you listen carefully to the gossip, does things for free. The inn is where you hear these stories. The inn is where the grain of truth is ground and polished until it becomes something that glows. Now, let us think about the bond that forms in these spaces. Not romance, though romance certainly happens in inns, but something quieter. The bond between people who have shared a fire. There is a particular kind of friendship that begins in an inn. It is different from the friendships of youth, which are formed through proximity and habit. It is different from the friendships of necessity, which are born from shared circumstance and dissolve when the circumstance ends. This is a friendship that begins in a moment of mutual recognition. You see something in the other person, they see something in you. And for a little while, in that warm room with the fire crackling and the ale flowing, you are allies. You are companions. You are, for a few hours, the kind of friends who have known each other for years. These friendships rarely survive contact. You leave the inn. You go your separate ways. The road carries you in different directions, but something remains. A memory, a warmth, the knowledge that for one night, in one small room, you were not alone. Geralt of Rivia has many such bonds. He is not, by nature, a man who makes friends easily. His mutations have made him something set apart. His profession has made him suspect. His personality, if we are being honest, is not the warmest. He is not cruel, but he is guarded. He expects the worst from people and is rarely disappointed. And yet, in inns and taverns across the continent, he has gathered a circle of people who would call him friend. Dandelion, certainly that irrepressible poet who attaches himself to danger like a burr to a cloak. Zoltan Chivai, the dwarf who has fought beside him and for him more than once. Regis, the barber surgeon with a past that would curdle lesser blood. Milva, the archer who rides with him through the hardest part of his journey. These are people who found each other in the strange alchemy of shared purpose and mutual respect. What binds them? Not obligation, not contract, something quieter. The recognition, perhaps, that the world is very difficult and it helps to have someone to walk it with, even if only for a while, even if only until the next crossroads. You feel yourself drifting now. The candle flame has burned lower. The room is filled with soft shadows. The sound of the stream outside seems to be coming from very far away, or perhaps from very long ago, a memory of water rather than water itself. Let us follow that feeling. Let us think about the water. The Witcher world is full of water. Rivers that carve the land into valleys, lakes that sit in hollows carved by ice 100,000 years ago, the sea that bounds the continent to the north and the south. But the water in these inns, the water in the pitchers and basins and the occasional bath, is brought from wells and springs by human hands. It is heated over fires by human labor. It is offered to weary travelers as a gift. This is the infrastructure of kindness, not the grand gestures, not the heroic deeds, but the daily accumulation of small services. The innkeeper who draws the water, the servant who carries it upstairs, the maid who changes the sheets and turns down the bed, the cook who wakes before dawn to light the fire and put the grain on to cook. None of this is magical. None of it would make a ballad, but it is the fabric of civilization. It is what separates the world of the Witcher from the chaos that surrounds it. Not the witches, not the kings, not the mages, but the nameless, uncelebrated people who keep the fires burning and the water clean and the bread rising. And this brings us to something important about the Witcher world. The stories we tell about it, the ones that grab the attention and hold the imagination, focus on the exceptional. The witches with their powers, the mages with their schemes, the kings with their wars. But the world itself is made of the ordinary. The farmers who grow the grain that becomes the bread, the blacksmiths who shoe the horses that carry the merchants, the mothers who raise the children who will grow up to be any of these things. The inn sits at the intersection of the exceptional and the ordinary. It is where the extraordinary comes to rest. It is where the monster hunter puts down his sword and picks up a spoon. It is where the princess, fleeing for her life, might stop for a bowl of stew and a moment's warmth. It is where the truth of the world becomes visible, that we are all, in the end, just people. Tired, hungry, in need of shelter. The inns of the Witcher world are, in this sense, democratic spaces. A king would be uncomfortable here, perhaps, but not unwelcome. A peasant is as welcome as a noble. A witcher sits in the same room as a mage, and for a moment, just a moment, they are not enemies or rivals. They are fellow travelers. They are people who have come in from the cold. This is what the inn provides. Not just physical warmth, but social warmth. The reminder that we belong to each other, that our fates are intertwined, that the farmer in the corner and the knight at the bar and the mysterious woman by the fire are all, in some sense, in the same boat. We are all alive. We are all doing our best. And here, in this small room, we can acknowledge that together. Now we want to talk about something different, but related. The roads themselves. You have been walking on roads all day. You know something about them. The feel of packed earth beneath your feet. The particular sound that hooves make on stone. The way a road curves around obstacles and follows the logic of the land rather than the desires of those who built it. The roads of the Witcher world are old. Many of them predate the current kingdoms. They were built by the elves in the ancient days when elves ruled, and humans were just another species struggling to survive in the forests. The elves built straight roads and sturdy bridges. They drained swamps and carved passes through mountains. And when the elves fell, when the humans rose and pushed the elder races back into the corners of the world, the roads remained. This is an important detail. The infrastructure of conquest outlasts the conquerors. The roads that were built to serve elven purposes now serve human purposes. The bridges that elves crossed to visit their sacred groves are crossed now by human merchants. The passes that elves carved to move their armies are used by human bandits. And the Witcher walks these roads. He has walked them so many times that they have become familiar. He knows which inns are trustworthy and which should be avoided. He knows where the bridges are in disrepair and where the fords are passable. He knows which stretches of forest are home to monsters and which are merely home to bandits. This knowledge is not taught in the trials. It is learned. One road at a time, one inn at a time, one night of sleeping in a barn because the inn was full or too expensive, or the innkeeper had heard about witches and wanted nothing to do with them. The Witcher learns the roads the way you learn a language. At first, it is all foreign. The signs are confusing. The customs are strange. But slowly, through exposure and repetition, the patterns emerge. The roads begin to make sense. The inns become familiar. The world becomes, if not friendly, then at least navigable. There is a particular kind of loneliness to the road. You know it. The long stretches where there is no one. The nights when the fire burns low and there is no one to talk to. The mornings when you wake in a strange place and for a moment, just a moment, you do not remember where you are or why. The Witcher lives this loneliness daily. He is a creature apart. His body marks him as different. His profession isolates him. The trials that made him also unmade him, in some sense. He can never be fully human again, but he is not quite something else either. He occupies a middle space, and that space is lonely. The inns are his respite. They are the places where loneliness can be temporarily set aside, not eliminated. The Witcher does not suddenly become sociable because he is sitting in a warm room, but the loneliness becomes lighter, shared, even, in a way, because other people are lonely too. Other people sit in inns, feeling apart from the world. The merchant who left his family to travel for months, the soldier far from home, the woman fleeing a past she cannot escape. The inn gathers these lonely people together, and in that gathering, the loneliness transforms. It becomes less a prison and more a condition shared. It becomes bearable. Let us think about the women who run these places, the innkeepers. In the Witcher world, running an inn is often women's work. This is not universally true, but it is common enough to notice. The women who keep these establishments have to be tough in ways that transcend the usual demands of the time. They have to manage crews of servants, often men, and keep them in line. They have to deal with drunks and fighters and occasional criminals. They have to negotiate with suppliers and keep accounts and manage the complex politics of a small community where everyone knows everyone. And they have to do this in a world where women are, generally speaking, not encouraged to be tough, where the expectations placed on women are domestic and passive, where a woman who speaks her mind too loudly or too often is likely to find herself marginalized. The innkeeper, therefore, is often a quietly revolutionary figure. She has created a space that operates by its own rules. In her establishment, she is the authority. She decides who stays and who goes. She sets the prices and enforces the standards. And she does this not by force, but by the accumulation of small decisions, each one reinforcing her authority, each one building a world that works. The best innkeepers are, in their own way, as formidable as any witcher. They have learned to read people. They have developed strategies for dealing with every type of trouble. They have created, out of nothing but wood and stone and stubbornness, a place of safety. You are very far away now. The room has become a warm, dark space. The sounds have become soft and distant. The candle must have gone out at some point, but you do not remember when. It does not matter. The darkness is comfortable. The darkness is the color of sleep. But we want to offer you one more image before we let you go. Imagine, if you would, a different clearing, a different crossroads, a different inn, but the same fire, the same warmth, the same feeling of welcome. This inn has been here for a very long time. It was here before the current kingdom was founded. It will be here long after the current kingdom has fallen. It has survived plagues and wars and the slow grinding change of centuries. And it has survived because human beings need it, because the road is long and the night is cold, and there must be somewhere to rest. The people in this inn are strangers to each other, the merchant and the soldier, the scholar and the farmer, the mysterious woman in the corner who does not speak to anyone. They come from different places, they have different histories, they believe different things, and yet they sit in the same room. They breathe the same air, they share the same fire. And in the morning, when the sun rises and they go their separate ways, they will carry something with them, not just the memory of a warm room and a good meal, but the knowledge that strangers can share space, that people with nothing in common can be civil to each other, that the world is not only violence and fear. This is what the inn teaches. This is what the Witcher world, for all its darkness, has not forgotten how to do. It has not forgotten how to be kind to strangers. Sleep now. Let the road carry you. Let the inns of your imagination appear and disappear like dreams. Let the fire burn low and the conversation fade to a murmur and then to silence. You are safe here. You are warm. You are exactly where you need to be. The witches walk their roads and they find their waystations. The merchants travel their routes and they find their inns. The poets sing their songs and they find their audiences. The world is full of paths that lead away from safety, but it is also full of paths that lead back. You have found yours, for tonight, at least. For this one night, the journey is over. The work is done. The danger has passed. All that remains is to rest, to let the warmth of the imaginary fire seep into your bones, to let the imaginary sound of the stream carry you down into sleep. The candle has gone out. The stars are shining through the window. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls. This is how the night should sound. This is how the world sounds when you let it go. Good night. May your roads lead to warm sands. May your inns be full and your beds soft. May the fire never die and the company never grow cold. Until the next clearing, until the next crossroads, until the next story finds its way to you. Rest now. You have earned it.